How are we going, folks? Welcome back to the Nightmare Cabin, and I am super excited to have with me tonight Mr. Lee Harrison from Monstrosity. How you doing, man?
Doing great, brother. Good to see you.
So we've got lots to talk about. We've got this new album that's going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks. Screams from Beneath the Surface. I guess we'll talk about that for a little bit, and then kind of go back through the history of the band and sort of give a talk about the back catalogue, and yeah, just see where things go. So the album. Is about to come out. Where's it? 13th of March, isn't it?
Yeah.
And well, I guess the first thing I guess we can talk about is the lineup because we've got some members from the last album. We've got new members. We've got old members that have come back. Do you want to tell us a bit about it, how the album came about, and yeah,
Okay. I guess the biggest news on it would be the original bass player, Mark Van Erp, is
yeah,
back. We've always remained friends with him. He was on the first album, and even though he didn't play on the second album, he did write material that became that was on the second album with songs like Manipulation Strain, Manic, Dream Messiah. He had a couple
yeah,
little inputs on that. Fatal Millennium. Uh, I would say, even this, like 1999, maybe 2000, we did a U.S. tour, and he went with us more as a friend and just to kind of hang out and help us out. And then later on, I guess 2010, we played Metal in the Forest down in Mexico City. He played that show, 70,000 tons of metal. He did one of those with us. And then our bass player at the time, Mike Pagioni, he moved to the Ukraine, and we did a few U.S. European tours, and he was able to just kind of hop, skip, and a jump from the Ukraine over to the European tours and make those without a problem. But we had some off shows in the U.S., California Death Fest, blah blah blah, where um, it just didn't make sense to fly Mike Pagioni all the way from the Ukraine just to play one show in the U.S.
yeah,
So we used Mark for that, and then just kind of, you know, I think um, it just worked out where I love Mark's bass playing. He's a brother from way back, and he's excited about doing it. So I just thought it would be cool to bring him in, for this album, and we'll see what the future holds. Who knows? Whatever happens, happens. We can't. I've learned there's no contracts, or there's nothing forcing anybody to do anything.
yeah,
So um, life happens, families, jobs, this, that, the other, band members stealing or bands stealing my members, all sorts of things happen. So there's no guarantees. But for now, everything seems to be going smooth. As far as Ed, um, our previous singer, Mike Robachek, made it clear to us that he wasn't happy with doing the tours and stuff. So we tried to keep him going as long as we could. Kind of when COVID hit, I told him, I said, look, COVID's hit, and we're not going to be doing as much. Try to stick it out and see what's going on. And he didn't really want to do that. He wanted to go ahead and go ahead and do his own thing, and he didn't want to tour anymore. Was the basic long and short of it, and it kind of forced us to find a new singer. We tried a few local guys, younger guys that were in local bands from around here, and they were killer. No, nothing wrong with them necessarily. They didn't have the high screams that we're used to doing. They could all do the low growling kind of
I'm
stuff.
I'm glad you've mentioned that. We'll get to that later on. Yeah, carry on.
And Jason Avery, our second singer, when he joined the band, he didn't have the high screams either. It was one of those things where we had time because George did Millennium. That gave Jason Avery time to like kind of perfect and learn how to, incorporate the high screams. And by the time he left the band, he was doing high screams with the best of them, like him and the Dimmu Borgir singer Shagrath were like, we did that Dimmu Borgir tour, and they were both kind of screaming like at a war for the longest screams. It was
Yeah.
kind of sick. Anyway,
Jason's been on the channel as well. I've spoke
yeah,
to.
he's awesome. I miss Jason for sure. He's a cool dude. But yeah, he did great with the scream. So like that's a case of that letting me know that you can learn the technique. It's not a case of just because you can't do it today doesn't mean you can't do it tomorrow.
Mm.
But anyway, it was obviously going to take time, and we were still we were working um, with these singers, trying to like see which way we were going to go. And actually, Terry Butler from Obituary, I was on tour with Inhuman Condition. We were backstage somewhere, and he brought up the idea to use Ed Webb. And I've known Ed forever. I just didn't cross my mind. I didn't really. I don't know if it's because he plays bass also or
Yeah.
whatever, but for whatever reason, it just yeah, exactly. It just didn't cross my mind. But um, as soon as he mentioned Ed's name, it clicked and was like, oh yeah, that he's a killer singer.
Why didn't I think of him before?
Exactly,
Yeah.
and he's right in here in Tampa. He's got the high screams. He knows everybody. He understands kind of what we're doing. Like the younger guys, they get it, but you know, Ed's just he's part of that old school camp, and it just seemed to work. As soon as I called him, pretty much as soon as I got home from that tour, and we got in the band room and things clicked, and we went and did like a festival in Atlanta and kind of took it from there. Everything's been going great since then. And
Yeah. Like
they did
I've
did a great
seen.
job on the album. Some of those screams are phenomenal.
Yeah, I saw this lineup on the last tour you did in the UK, and the obviously that would have been the lineup would have been new at the time, and you did a set which went through the entire catalog, and the lineup just fit together, and it all seemed. I know it was. It's not seamless when you're trying to find people and put it all together, but it seemed like a seamless transition when
Right,
going from the material from Passage of Existence to stuff from Imperial Dome,
right.
and yeah, when Ed again when I first saw who he had joined the band, I was like, oh, oh, Massacre, yeah, made sense, and yeah, he the I wanted to ask you about the screams actually because there are some screams on this that's just piercing, and he holds them as well. And I was going to say, I remember listening to an interview with Brian Werner, who was with you for a short stint, and he said that he learned to scream and hold screams. It was you that taught him, and I was wondering, did you was you involved with that as well? Or but then again, Ed does some pretty high screams on
Ed pretty
Massacre
much
anyway, so that was
he
something I
had
did want to ask you. But
yeah, he had it down. Um, yeah, he didn't need to train him really to do anything.
no,
Maybe some of the timings, were a little weird for him. Like when we play, like we've been trying to work in Fatal Millennium, the song, and it's a little trick. Like some of those vocal patterns are a little trickier. So like something like that where I might have to go over a part with him, but it's pretty rare, and he gets it pretty quickly. He's it's not an issue.
so with the theme of the album, I know with like Passage of Existence and stuff, with songs like Cosmic Pandemia, you had the whole thing with a virus comes to the planet via a asteroid, and then you've got the with the artwork of um of the album, and then you incorporated the artwork with the album with the album of the artwork of Millennium,
Right.
and did that kind of carry on with the lyrics of the new one, or is it always the singer that
Um,
writes the lyrics? Who handles the lyrics for
it's
them?
always been kind of a common theme in my lyrics. The apocalypse, the end of times, that kind of those themes, people dying. Vapors is from the new album. That's a good
Yeah,
example of a song where just people are just vaporized. Um, yeah, so I mean, it's a kind of like it's we've always kind of had that theme, and it's I kind of that was purposely kept that same. A lot of people are asking what the meaning of the album title is, and there really isn't any grand meaning. It's just some cool words that I came up with, and just a cool theme. But there's no real like there's no concept for the album or anything like that.
but are you into Lovecraft and like, cosmic horror and stuff like that?
Yeah, but not yes and no. I mean, I don't consider them influences necessarily.
No.
But yeah, I do like it. You know, I do enjoy some of it. Um,
The listening to the album, the first thing that stands out to me is the opening track, "Banished to the Skies," and yeah, we get like a clean melodic part on the guitar, which then leads into the song, and the song's very it's like you're opening up with an epic, and
right. Yeah,
I,
I didn't realize that until I've been doing these interviews the last day or two. I guess it's kind of different, and I didn't really see it that way. You know, it was the first song written for the album. I wrote four songs before we during the mixing session for Passage. Atrophied, Banished, The Thorns, and Dark Aura were written before we finished Passage. Even I was trying to get ahead, you know, so that it wouldn't take us so long to get to the next album. But as usual, it took forever. But yeah, so and then around 2020, when COVID hit, I kind of locked myself in the room and wrote the rest of the songs and tweaked whatever parts needed to be tweaked. Me and Matt Barnes, longtime guitar player, he's been in the band 16 years now.
yeah,
He's pretty much my right hand man on the album. I can send him something at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and by 6 o'clock in the morning, he has it sent back to me with my ideas done better. You know, so uh,
yeah.
he works with me. You know, and that was the key thing. You know, with him and me on this album is that the fact that he makes it easy. You know, and I don't have to like talk him into learning my songs so that they can put in their own songs or whatever they're trying to, whatever's going on. It just, he works with me and understands that kind of how I do things, and he understands the goal for Monstrosity and the vision.
It felt to me that it feels like Monstrosity now are on an arc that started with Spiritual Apocalypse, and this feels like a continuation on
Yeah,
from Passage of
to me,
Existence.
it's really a continuation from In Dark Purity, kind of because that's where we really found their formula of like with Imperial Doom was kind of more of a brutal thing.
Yeah,
Millennium was more of a technical musician
yeah,
kind of thing. And then within Dark Purity, the production was finally good. Like Imperial, no secret, we don't like that album because the drums are way too loud and the guitars are buried. Millennium was good, but the drums just weren't powerful enough in the end. In Dark Purity was that first album where everything kind of happened. The songs were good, the production was good, and it was kind of that balance between brutal and technical, so that
yeah. So,
the kids that don't listen to uh, the kids that aren't musicians, they can still listen to it and get into it. Where some sometimes the technical stuff loses those guys,
yeah,
and yeah, the musicians love it, but your average metalhead dude just, it's too much craziness. They don't even know what to think.
yeah,
So Dark Purity was kind of the first album where we found that balance of everything, and so we've
yeah,
always tried to kind of keep that balance, that formula of like mixing the brutal parts, the dark brutal, mixed with like some the stuff that the musicians like too, because that's it's fun for us to play those kind of songs where it's like the musician, the stuff that the musicians like, the odd time signatures and the kind of the crazier parts. That's what keeps it fun. And now is, I was even thinking like for the next album, we may even do kind of some more of that stuff, the more intricate stuff, because we don't have to play every song live, you know what I mean? So we could get away with doing like just a completely crazy song and just not play it live, because it won't, we know that that's what I think what makes Deicide so powerful is that they can write these songs. Legion was a little crazy, but for the
Mm.
most part, Deicide found a formula that's kind of, your average dude can watch him live for the first time and be like, yeah, I get in. They can get into the
Yeah,
song kind of on a first listen rather than having, a bunch of listens, so to speak. Whereas some of these technical songs go, stray. So yeah, and back to your point, spiritual apocalypse. I've noticed lately that it kind of seems to get lost in the mix. A lot of people kind of overlook it. It's a great record. I really think all the song I love, Inhuman Race is one of my favorite songs of our catalog.
yeah, and
Um, there's other songs, just I think it's a really strong album. And, I think just because now the fact that we're getting more and more albums, and of course everybody loves Imperial Doom and they want to hear Millennium and Dark Purity, and kind of after that people tend to, drift off
Remnants
past,
of the
so,
Divination is one of my favorites.
yeah,
Yeah,
there's another one.
the yeah, I was saying that it's got a perfect mix of the album of like, wow, they're doing new territory here, but then there'll be another song like the one you did the video for. Let's get the
Colossal.
Colossal Rage, or I'm trying to. Vapors, is that Vapors is the one? I'm doing it from memory here. Yeah, Vapors has got like a real like a riff at the beginning of it. Is it Vapors?
It's the
Like a bit
three
of a
four riff.
yeah.
One two three
But
one one two three. Kind of Imperial Doomish a little bit, just because of
yeah, there's you've got
but
songs like
the Atrophy. That's kind of one song that like has all the ingredients of Monstrosity.
yeah,
Where
there's you've got that, but then there'll be a riff where it's like, yeah, that's Monstrosity. That's you've got a perfect mix of like familiarity and like, yeah, this is the you've just got there's a certain riff that just sounds like a Monstrosity riff now, and yeah, it goes back to In Dark Purity up until present
right,
day while you're still moving forward. It's
yeah,
yeah, afterwards, and like you say, with the lineup changes, it really is a testament to you that you are able to manage the lineup changes, but yet still keep this consistent quality of musicians and
yeah.
songwriting.
Yeah, I think a lot. Of course, a lot of it has to do with it. I play guitar, and then I wrote 9 of the 10 songs on the album. I was the main writer anyway. Barnes helps me out, takes my ideas and makes them better.
Well,
But
this is the thing. You're always around doing something. You know you. I've got the. I think the Terrorizer albums are back there somewhere. But you did a couple of album or two with
uh,
Terrorizer. Did the live album as well.
right,
You were touring with them for a while. Then I'll see you in Obituary, and
right.
and then you was working with Human
Inhuman,
Condition, and then but you always come back to
right?
Monstrosity. You always find your way back
Yeah,
eventually, and you've got this. Just this. Even with the gaps between albums, it always still it's always
right. Yeah,
conducive.
we try to. I've always tried to make sure I put in the work for every album and not just rush to get something out. I always make sure that the albums or the songs are as strong as they can be. It's a personal goal of mine, and if it takes longer to make it that way, that's what it takes. I do whatever it takes to make the great album. That's my thinking anyway. Obviously, some people, different lineups people have different ideas. Oh, this is the best lineup. That's this chemistry works better than that chemistry. There's always little, personal things that people are going to have no matter what I do. I've seen a review of the album where, oh, this is just generic, blah, blah, blah. And then other people think it's the best thing, so there's always different opinions and you can never satisfy anybody. But I try to do the work to where I'm satisfied and I know what, I was there for the first album and I put my heart into that thing, and so in every album, but so I know I'm there from the start to the finish, so I know what goes into each album, and I make sure that try to keep a whole, keep that standard to a certain level.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the have you got anything else going on at the moment as well? What other projects or is it
I do my rock project Lavoisin. I do that at the Midnight from Crimson Glory.
midnight?
We
Yeah.
released the covers album not too long ago, a year or so ago, and
Has
there's a
Leviathan got an album out? Because I've seen videos on YouTube, but I've never seen anything available.
yeah, it's on
Levi-
my Conquest Music website. There's
All
a
right.
three
Well,
there's a three CD.
there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a three CD disc available with the Midnight stuff, and then the covers album. We did CDs and vinyl. We did some like splatter vinyl and this and that. We did some variations, so you can find it on the Conquest website if you look for that. And there's actually a lot of power metal fans. They love Midnight, and it's actually it's done pretty good. People
Oh yeah, but what about your rock project?
with that, yeah, I haven't been able to record it properly. I need a budget, and I just haven't had one, and I'm busy with everything else. It's kind of one of those things where I just
Yeah,
haven't.
I like the song with the bridge on the
Yeah,
video. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a cool song.
Um, I basically got my albums ready to go. I just need to record it properly, and I've recorded it like 3 or 4 times, but it's still not quite to where I want it. So I'm gonna try it again. Eventually one day I'll get it. Get in the Morrisound or over at Audio Hammer or somewhere and
There
get it
was
recorded for real.
last time we spoke, there was talk of Imperial Doom being re-recorded. Is that still on the cards
Um,
or?
we want to do that at some point for sure.
I when I spoke to Jason, he said that he wanted to do it, and he said that he wanted to do that and also record Rain in Blood.
Yeah,
He said
that
release it as a double album
yeah, that ain't happening. But
because of
uh,
the Angel of Death cover.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It'd be fun, I guess, but there's no plans for that necessarily.
Um. Yeah. So what a lot of people don't know is you was in the original lineup of Malevolent Creation, or one of the original lineups anyway.
Yeah,
Wrote a good chunk of the
I was
Ten
on the
Commandments.
second demo, the 1989 demo.
Yeah, and
And that
you
was a
got
fun period. We they had just moved down from Buffalo, and they kind of brought all their brothers and cousins and uncles, and so when we played, they had a built-in crowd already of like 20 or 30 people that would show up at our shows, and so the club owners thought we were like drawing all these people, and so like that brought in more people because we were popular, and we would play this place called the Treehouse every 2 weeks, and we were doing really good, and that was kind of when death metal was first hitting. Um, Obituary, Slowly We Rot, Sepultura, Beneath the
yeah.
Remains. Those were brand new albums that had just come out. Morbid Angel, Altars of Madness was recorded, but it was only out in Europe. But you could feel the Florida scene bubbling, and of course, having more sound kind of spawned, helped spawn a bunch of bands that you know might not otherwise exist in the national circuit, so to speak.
Yeah, and then so how did you make the jump to initially form Monstrosity? I don't think I ever.
All right, it's a little bit long. Hang on.
Bear with me one sec. I just want to grab something.
All right, so
Got it. Right. Yeah.
so I had I had met Mark Van Erp, our original bass player, when he was with Cynic. Cynic was more of a thrash band
Yeah. Yeah. You listen to.
originally. They were like more of a death. They weren't quite death metal, but they were a real heavy, fast thrash band. And I didn't have a band at the time, but I ended up moving in with Mark. He had an apartment with his girlfriend at the time in South Miami, and I moved in with him, and I was trying to work with this singer kid. It didn't work out with him. Right around that time, Mark lost that apartment, so we needed to find a new place to live. I was literally, and this is not a lie at all, I had my drums in the back of my van, and I would go to a mall parking lot and set up my drums in the back of my van and just play up, turn my car stereo as loud as it would go, and I would play a practice in the back of my van, just in a parking lot, random parking lot,
Yeah.
just because I didn't have anywhere to practice, you know. So anyway, there was a local band called KGB. They were kind of a hardcore crossover DRI-ish kind of band, and they needed a drummer, and they had a warehouse, and it worked. Cynic at the time had lost their warehouse, and it worked out to where me and Mark Van Erp moved into this warehouse and lived there. And then Cynic moved in as a band, and I was practicing with the other band, KGB. So we had like Sean Reinert's drum set in one corner and my drum set in another corner. And we had just like a wall of amplifiers on the back wall. We had a PA, and we would practice, and both bands would practice at different times. And it made it to where we could live, rent for each of us was $50 a month, so it was cheap. And I didn't have to have a job. I could just focus on becoming a drummer and being a musician, and that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to work a day job.
Yeah, you
Anyway,
hear this so much now. Sorry to interrupt, but you hear like with Megadeth all, lived squatted together, and Morbid Angel all worked in a car wash together, and you just
right.
a space where there's just the rent, if there's any at all, is just next to nothing. You're just not getting that now with
Yeah.
people.
So anyway, it was a learning experience, and it was a fun time. This was around late '88, early '89, during that period. And then I went up and I tried out for Hell Witch. I don't know if you're familiar with Hell Witch.
Yeah,
Um, they were just too far away. They lived in Boca Raton, and it was like 2 hours drive. I'd have to bring my drums, set them up, my drums, practice, tear down my drums, and then drive all the way back.
yeah,
It was kind of a pain in the ass, but it was a learning experience. And then not long after that was when I joined Malevolent, and Malevolent, things started going good for us. We were playing that place, the Treehouse, like I said, and everybody was coming out. We were getting good reviews. People were showing up. We did that '89 demo. Right around that period, Mark Van Erp, he left. He got fired from Cynic, left Cynic, fired, quit, whatever. He ended up going back up to New York. I kept working with Malevolent. Anyway, that was kind of when the whole death metal boom really took off. We were bringing Obituary down to Fort Lauderdale to play. We brought Morbid Angel down to play, um, and we were trying to get our Roadrunner deal. We were writing kind of more better songs, kind of more updated, a little more death metal type songs, and we were planning on doing the third demo when me and Phil got into an argument over money. Basically, the money we had originally, the money that we would make at shows, we would pay our warehouse rent. But then when we did the demo, all of a sudden that money started going to do the mail. We were sending mail off to, like, demos to Italy, demos to
yeah,
Egypt, demos everywhere, all the magazines. And so all that money that we were getting, instead of paying the warehouse rent, now we were paying for mail. So we kind of had, and I was still living at the warehouse. I was a warehouse rat. That's what I did, is I lived in warehousing. And anyway, it kind of came to a head that, we didn't have money for the warehouse rent, and ended up getting kicked out of our warehouse. And Phil ended up finding some other guy, Mark Simpson, who's a cool guy. He had a garage. He could, his father had a business where they could just ship the mail off with his dad's business for free. So they didn't have to pay for mail anymore. I
yeah.
understand. So Malevolent went with him as a drummer, and I was left out in the cold, kind of, so to speak. So I went back home for a while. And it worked out at the same time that Mark Van Erp came back and he ended up joining Malevolent. So it would have been cool to, to be in Malevolent with Mark, but it
Yeah.
didn't work out. So I kept in touch with them, and I would still go. I had a girlfriend down in Fort Lauderdale, so I would drive back and forth from the west coast of Florida back down to Fort Lauderdale and hang out with her. Go to the show. I saw Malevolent with their new drummer and hung out with Mark Van Erp. Um, so I kept my ear to the ground, so to speak, as far as what was going on down there. Mark would tell me the latest happenings with Malevolent Creation. So when after about a year, I had met this guitar player from Virginia, Washington, Virginia area, and he introduced me to George, Corpse Grinder, and that's how I met him. And we were going to do a band with those guys, and about that same time, this was July/August of 1990. Mark Van Erp got kicked out of Malevolent. And so I called him up, he called me and told me, oh, I'm out of Malevolent now. I said, well, we should do something. I got this singer guy and I got this guitar player guy. And so he's like, come on down. So I packed up my drums again and I went back down to Fort Lauderdale, and me and Mark Van Erp started writing. We wrote Definitive Inquisition and Burden of Evil pretty much straight away. And then not long after that, John Rubin got kicked out of Malevolent. So three of the four of
Yeah.
Monstrosity were former Malevolent.
Yeah.
And the joke was that we were Malevolent Rejection. That was the name of, people would
Malevolent
jokingly call
rejection.
but it just worked out. So then we had, it came down, we got offered to do a show with Massacre as our first show, and we didn't even have a lineup really solidified yet, but we called George up and said, hey, you want to do this? And we ended up buying him a bus ticket, come down to Fort Lauderdale from Baltimore. And he did. He got on the bus and came down, and with like a month later, we played our first show, and the rest is history.
History, yeah.
So there's the long and short of it.
I got the Darkness Dream Horror Infinity 7-inch, and then obviously you did Imperial Doom,
Yeah.
and yeah, like you say, the rest is history.
Yeah. Malevolent was fun days though. I put a lot into that. Me and Phil were a good combination actually, as far as working together. It just it came down to money in the end. And it was a good lineup, Jason Blackowitz, Brett Hoffman, and Phil and myself. We were kind of the core, and then we brought John Rubin in.
Are you still in contact with Phil today? You still
I saw him when they came through with Vader. And
I remember I spoke to Darren. Darren was on the channel, and a couple of weeks later, it came out that he had joined Malevolent. So he'd done a thing with me talking about Malevolent, and I said about the future of the band. Like, what do you feel? Like, what would you like to see as a fan? And he went, I would like to see them do an album with all the ex-members. And yeah, anyway, about a month or so goes by, and he joins the band. And I wonder if he's still got that in mind for the new album that they're going to do. And I was wondering if you would
yeah, I've been,
be, they've not reached out to you, or
I don't know. No, they haven't reached out to me.
that'd be cool. But yeah, all right. So you've got a tour coming up.
Yeah, April 18th is the first show. We're doing like 3 weeks. Um, the good news is that it's kind of timed with the album. That's kind of always
Mm.
been an issue for us, is that we end up, touring 2 years after the album's out. And so it's
Yeah,
like,
you got
yeah,
more or less a month, haven't you? So
yeah. So
it's fresh in
I'm
people's
kind of
ears still. They're
curious
gonna
to see how that goes.
with
Um,
the people who would have heard, like, would have been used to the songs. Normally, like, you got bands that at the moment where, well, even a band I'm going to go see tomorrow, Silosis, they've been on tour for nearly a month. The album's out tomorrow, and they're playing
huh,
stuff off this new album.
right, right.
you know. But yeah, Same with I remember Megadeth when Dystopia, they were touring ages before the album was even out, and it's you're not playing nothing off it, and then all of a sudden up. So it's funny how the timing
Right.
of it.
Yeah, it's been something that I wanted to do it during Passage. It just didn't work out that way. Um, so I'm just glad now we can do that. And hopefully the idea is to keep the ball rolling. We got right after that tour, we're doing the Maryland Death Fest. We're playing with Napalm and Sinister and Repulsion at the pre-party for that. And then rumor has it we're doing the Milwaukee Metal Fest this year.
That's
Uh,
always awesome, that lineup. Yeah,
so
they get everyone out for that one, don't they?
so that's right after Maryland. So it'll be not long after that. And then we're doing Brutal Assault in Czech Republic in August. And then we're talking about doing a U.S. tour in like end of summer, early fall, somewhere in there. And
Awesome.
then South America, maybe like October, November, depending what happens with that.
You always do well in that territory, didn't you? You got
Yeah, South
um,
America's awesome, man. You can't go wrong there. I love those fans. They support, they come out, and they're rabid. It's like being in the Beatles for a day or something. Here in America, we can't get arrested, but they go down there and it's like being in the Beatles or something.
yeah, yeah. You've done a what you that was in Brazil, wasn't it? You did the live EP. I've got it here somewhere.
Yeah,
Brazil. Yeah.
you need to send that to the fucking put that in the fireplace, man.
Oh, was it? Someone said that about yeah. Who was I interviewed? And they said the same thing about one of their albums. They were like, yeah, like, if we don't count that one. Who was it? It'll come to me tonight. But
It was like
yeah,
the worst possible experience, and of course, it makes it. They end up pressing it on vinyl. It's like it was so. The next night was perfect. But they didn't get that. They got the shitty show where there was no ventilation. It could barely breathe. Everything's like way too slow, and we're just making mistakes left and right. Of
dude,
course,
I would
it's like,
love to be in a band as good as Monstrosity on a bad day.
yeah.
So
Well,
yeah.
I I say file that album under comedy.
Well, Lee, it's great talking to you, man, and all the best with this new album. Again, it's just a fantastic addition to a faultless catalog, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you when you're on tour here next. And yeah, March 13th, guys, it's out on Metal Blade Records.
Right.
Screams from Beneath the Surface, and when the album comes out, I'll be doing a in-depth review on album release day. Well, basically, as soon as it turns up in the post, I'll
Awesome,
be
man.
reviewing it. So. Yeah, man, it's great talking to you, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching,
Sounds
everyone.
good.
Um, yeah, check out Conquest Music. I'll put a link to it in the description. So support Monstrosity directly, and check out some of Lee's other projects. If you remember
Yeah.
Midnight from Crimson Glory, his solo stuff was with Lee, and t-shirts and all that good stuff. So yeah, and check out the new album. So see you all later.
Thanks, buddy.